that we should have a quorum. And is Jim on the call?
I am. Saul, would you like to check and make sure we have a quorum, please? There's Saul.
Chair Purcell, you here?
Here.
Commissioner Batts?
Bishop Campbell here.
Campbell's here. Batts?
I'm here.
All right. Commissioner Coleman? Commissioner Theeden?
I'm here.
Commissioner Ansari?
I am here.
Commissioner Bowers?
Here.
Commissioner Batts? Commissioner Coleman? Commissioner Coleman, yes, you're here. Paulette? Okay, I'm sure she'll join shortly. This meeting is being held pursuant to the executive order issued by the governor in connection with local governments conducting virtual meetings. The meeting will be recorded and can be viewed on YouTube at a later date. In addition, the public has been invited to participate and make comments. And at this time, I will turn the meeting over to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Thank you, Mr. Harbison. The meeting is formally called to order. A quorum appearing. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly seconded. Any discussion of the minutes? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Aye.
And the minutes are approved. Our introductions this morning, I will turn to Mr. Harbison for our introductions, particularly of, well, actually, I want to do it because I see Brenda Morrow there in the garden. And I'm very pleased to acknowledge Brenda Morrow, our friend, the president of Edge Hill Apartments Resident Association, who is joined by Tama Thornton, who is a property manager there at Edge Hill. But Brenda Morrow has been there a long time, and she knows a lot, and I'm really glad that she's here.
Oh, thank you.
Please tell us how things are and how you are and what we should know.
Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Good morning.
What's going on here in Edge Hill is so beautiful. Even with the COVID-19 thing that we're dealing with, people are actually stepping up and helping one another. People are actually, and like I sent a report for you guys. I hope you all got it, but we're going back to old school ways, actually going to sign-in sheets from previous meetings and calling and making sure that everyone is okay and asking them to pass along information to their neighbors. And that's been working out really, really well. But we are in the garden. Well, I'm in the garden. The cutters came this morning. I had to make sure they went between each row. And we've got so much good stuff out here coming up. So that's just a brief thing.
Okay. Well, that means a lot. It's wonderful
Do
to
y'all
have
want
your
more? If y'all want more, I can keep talking.
if there's something more we need to know, you should tell us, because we, at least me, I've been listening to you a long time, and I'm delighted to hear your report.
I needed for you guys to know that the Organized Neighbors of Edge Hill, which is a nonprofit organization that the residents started here 11 years ago. Actually, in 1991, we got up and running. But we've got a grant from the Community Foundation, Staler Foundation, and Family Foundation, Staler Family Foundation. And what we're doing is that money is going to, well, it's $6,000. It's going towards making sure that residents have food and cleaning supplies, and every first and third Saturday uh, it's just distributed at the Edge Hill United Methodist Church. So that's been a godsend for residents. And also, I needed you all to know that even though we're social distancing, we don't have the youth program in the garden that we had last year, Youth Works, because they came from all over the U.S. and spent a week here. And but this year, we don't have the youth involvement, other than the fact that we have uh, uh, Boy Scout troops and Eagle Scouts. And I also sent a picture of a picnic table that they made. They actually made us 2 picnic tables and delivered them here to the garden a few weeks ago. So we're doing all we can to distance. Our oldest gardener, Miss Mildred Alford, is 95, and she has mandated that we meet every morning at 8 o'clock instead of 10, so we'll be ready to get out of the garden. So that she's a very wise lady, because it's getting very, very hot. I got a call today from Salama Urban Ministries. They have fruits and vegetables, 20 boxes that they need to get rid of. So when I get finished with you guys, I'm going to start coordinating residents going down there and picking up those fruits and vegetables. There's so much going on, and so that report that I said, give you a brief overview of what all we're doing here. We're so glad to have Ms. Toma here as our manager. She's awesome.
Well,
And
thank
it's so
you.
good to see you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Morrow. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Go ahead, Ms. Thornton.
Again, Ms. Morrow is just a joy to have. She even through the crisis, she's continuing to go. So we appreciate that. And we have gotten several food programs going on over here where we've had meals and groceries delivered to residents at both Edge Hill and Gurnett. So that's been a blessing. We've had some COVID kits delivered over at Gurnett. 176 bags were delivered to the elderly there. So that's been good. Second Harvest and New Hope Baptist Church continue to provide meals to our residents at both properties. So things are still rolling on despite, a social distancing, and we're trying to hold on.
Well, thank you very, very much for that report and for the work that you do and the team there at Edge Hill does, as well as, of course, our neighborhood association. Are there any questions from the board for either Ms. Morrow or Ms. Thornton? Again, our great thanks. We know Edge Hill well, and we know that because of your work, and we know that when there's more that we need to know, you'll let us know as an agency and support.
Thank you.
I'm going to sign off if no one has any questions or anything. But can y'all see this?
Yes.
Oh, that's a beautiful eggplant.
Yes. One of the gardeners just picked it a few minutes ago and said, Miss Brenda, look at your first eggplant. So there she goes.
All right.
Perfect. Beautiful.
All right. Thank you. Perfect report.
Thank you.
All right, we're on agenda item number 4 now, and that's public comments. Are there any public comments?
Jamie, have you received any requests for public comments? As of before the committee meeting, we had no requests for public comments. Jamie, are you on? Okay, so Latanya.
She's muted. Here she comes.
Okay, great.
Yes, I'm on. We have it.
All right. There being no public comments, we'll move now to reports from committees, and we have a report from the Housing and Community Services Committee.
Thank you. So yeah, the committee met on July 9th, and we had 2 items of business. The first was a proposed amendment to the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan. The the basics of this was in light of the fact that there were potential shortfalls coming from HUD. HUD asked for a review of the HCV administrative plan, and it revealed that there was just kind of like a technical issue with how we would handle the reinstatement of families that were going to, if in the event that it occurred that we were short on vouchers, how the termination of families would be handled and how they would be reinstated when funds were returned. And so we reviewed what was proposed, and the committee recommended approval of HCV plan as proposed. And so with that, I'd like to put that motion forward.
All right, we have a motion, and it's a committee motion. No need for a second. Is there any discussion? I think we should add that MDHA has not gone through a reduction in this way and does not anticipate one. This is simply providing a procedure which is required by our federal authorities. Any other questions or comments? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no, and you adopt the amendment. Anything else to report?
Yeah, so the next item on the agenda was the approval of the Public Housing Authority annual plan. And so that was reviewed with us, and the committee recommended the approval of the annual plan and the 2 guide form resolutions. So knowing that that was a recommendation that will come to the board in August, this meeting, we are going to hold our public meeting to get any additional public comments on that public housing plan. With that, there was no additional business, and the meeting was adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a report from Joint Development and Finance.
We do. So the committee met on July 9th, and we reviewed a pilot for Hickory Ridge Apartments. And that is a development that's 60 units, all 2 to 3 bedrooms. And it would be serving households at an average rate of 80% AMI with a maximum AMI of 80%, since that's a low-income housing tax credit project. And so we recommended approval of that pilot agreement. And that will be coming to the board for full vote in August. From there, we went and we had our annual presentation from Vanguard on our employee retirement plan. And I think that we were pleased with what we saw. There was a good diverse array of options being offered to our employees in terms of retirement. Our employees are vested with a % retirement amount over a 5-year period once they've reached 5 years of tenure. So it's a very generous retirement package. And the fees on the retirement are particularly low. And so that's something that we think is incredibly beneficial to our employees. I think the one matter of concern based upon the information that was shared is we want to be increasing participation in retirement savings amongst our employees, however we can do so. And so Pat Zicklin did present to us the education that's being incorporated and let us know the education that's being incorporated when we have employees come on board, and identified additional opportunities for educating employees over time. With that, we ended up tabling the remaining agenda items until our meeting this morning. So we met, the Joint Finance and Development Committee met just before this meeting, and we took up the presentation of the redevelopment districts, which had started at a previous committee meeting. In this presentation, we were really evaluating and looking at what has happened since the TIF committee that was formed about a year ago, I believe. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But about a year ago, and they came forward with 16 recommendations for how we can do things like increase transparency amongst TIF, really start to evaluate our efficacy with how TIF is being administered in the city. And so Joe Kane reported out where we are on the status of implementing those recommendations. Some are still in progress, some have been completed. And that will continue until the fall, when we will be giving a presentation as well on the status update of those recommendations to Metro Council. When we were having our discussion, a larger question came up around both the role of MDHA and the objectives that MDHA should carry forward when we are considering how TIF should be used in the future. And some of those things, so the board ultimately ended up deciding that we need to continue that conversation in the future. This is a question of whether we are a conduit or whether we are a leader in shaping our neighborhoods when TIF is being implemented, and how exactly should we be coordinating when it comes to the mayor's office, Metro Council, and the planning department to really make sure that we are advancing what we want to be advancing with TIF infusions of money. And so we put some questions out to Joe. Joe is going to consider with Mr. Harbison how we are going to get some additional data, and then evaluate with Commissioner Purcell when we will take that conversation in the future. With that, the only additional business was just briefly mentioning that our budget will be coming to the board in the next meeting. And so please look for that. It's going to be a big meeting. So with that, there is no additional business, and the meeting was adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any questions? Item 7 is the report from the Human Resources Committee.
You're on mute.
Still muted.
Got it. So on July 9th, the Human Resource Committee met, and our order of business was pretty simple. The first, we approved the minutes. The last time we met was December 10th of 2019. We approved the minutes from that meeting. The next part of the agenda was really around our safety and health plan. So the staff presented that to the board. I think what we determined, well, not what I think, what we determined is that the board needed to have the benefit of having the full plan in advance of a summary presentation, and we did not have the full plan in advance. So since that meeting, that safety and healthy plan has been distributed, and so the board will meet again in this August meeting to go through and take a vote on approving the safety and healthy plan resolutions that will happen in August. The next agenda item was really around the SEIU update. As everyone is aware, and as our executive leadership has been doing a really good job of keeping us up to speed, is how we are handling our employees and our residents in a time of this, of this pandemic. And so, while in a perfect world we would be able to kind of sort of be able to stay hands off in our portfolio and with our people, we are not. And so we are continuing to provide service calls that are high in priority through our normal process. And so there were some members, some members of some employees who were members of the SEIU that sought to essentially get hazard pay for their work during this COVID-19 pandemic. It's been determined that those workers do not qualify for hazard pay as a result of their work, and so we have made that determination. And I think Commissioner Coleman kind of made it. I think her really poignant comment was that if the decision has been made that they do not qualify for, or it's been determined, not the decision, but if it has been determined that they do not qualify for hazard pays, that we need to be very clear in communicating that to those members, to which the executive staff of MDHA has promised to do that. And so with that, there was no additional business, and the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. We are now ready for the executive reports. This is item 8 on your agenda, the executive director's report. Jim Harbison.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay? Good. Just as context, because it helps us evaluate kind of where we are, just touching our mission that we create affordable housing, support neighborhoods, strengthen our communities, and help build a greater Nashville. That's our mission. It's based on our charter, which was very simple, the original charter: develop and manage affordable rental housing for Nashville citizens of low income. And that's led, this is some tripping back to our retreat, to really 5 major objectives. Increase and provide sustainable and affordable housing, the first. Second, improve self-sufficiency for our residents. Third, strengthen MDHA's finances and organizational capacity. Fourth, strengthen relations with key constituents. And fifth, assist in improving Nashville's neighborhood. And then that led to 10, what we called intent, but I'm not going to go through the 10, but that kind of gives you the context, and everything I'm going to talk about now of where we are fits into one of those 5 objectives, or into the mission, or into the charter. So first, I'm very pleased to tell the board we have won our 6th 9% low-income housing tax credit award in essentially a row. That is a big deal. And I want to thank Jim Thilgen, our consultants, Phyllis, and others. We've all worked pretty hard at this, and this is one of the things I just applaud the staff. That's roughly a $3.6 million tax credit in investor equity. Second, Boswell 2 Manning Place is near completion. That's right down the street from the headquarters. So as you drive down the interstate and you approach the Nissan Stadium, if you look to your right, you see the change. You see mixed income becoming a reality. You see the envision process being true. And I hope that that communicates to the community the seriousness of this board in remediating concentrated poverty and providing better opportunity to meet those 5 goals of increased self-sufficiency and better affordable housing. We anticipate the townhomes have already gone for lease. They're all leased with 2, and Manning Place should open within 30 days. Additionally, I'll be appearing before the THDA board tomorrow on the Quality Assurance Program, which is the guiding directives for next year's low-income housing tax credits. We have a couple of small points we'll be making to them, but mainly I want to thank them for their great support, because these 6 annual low-income housing tax credit awards have been the foundation for our building program. We're waiting to close the interest rate reduction that we brought to the board 2 months ago for bringing our 3.25% loan down to 3.7. We anticipate closing next week. That's over at 10th and Jefferson. On tornado disaster recovery, we have put in abeyance our claim to FEMA, because we were blessed to have the insurance, our insurance program made us whole, along with the donations and philanthropic effort we got from the local community. So we placed our FEMA request on hold. On to other loans, our community investment tax credit loan for the Red Oak townhomes, we should be closing on within a week. And the loan for the parking garage at Rolling Mill Hill, which we discussed about 2 months ago, which leads to the continuing development of Rolling Mill Hill, and ultimately capital coming to MDHA for the Envision program, is on track to close next week. So all of those fit into those top 5. We're improving our financial position, developing new affordable housing in a mixed income environment, or strengthening the organizational capacity and providing economic opportunity for our residents. Within that, I'll turn to the other Envision processes before I come back to a little bit more detailed discussion here at Casey. At Envision Napier Sudicum, we will be having our convening event for the Envision Center, which is the HUD Secretary approved site. We're in one site for our people, neighborhoods, and affordable housing program at Sudicum Napier. We will have 11 collaborative partners. HUD will have the convening webinar next week. Our key here is our Connect Home program, where we're providing laptops to every family that has school-aged children in Sudicum Napier. That's a total of 957 children, of whom 97 have received their laptops. And we'll re-begin those issuances the week of August 4th. We've had some hiccups because of COVID in the last 2 months, but we've got those resolved. We've also received a grant of $25,000 that will assist us in job training and work readiness. And our Jobs Plus program continues to be successful at the Envision Center. Back to Envision Casey, just to go through, I know for the development chair, we discussed this, but I'll just try to hit the highlights. Explore School, the last I's are being dotted and T's crossed on the playground that's there. That's about a $200,000 playground. This is at Envision Casey, the charter school dedicated to school-age children here, again, building self-sufficiency for our residents. We're working on development on the activity center and are in close coordination and seeking a community quarterback as part of that. That will be the recreational center. We're in concept development for that and intend to apply for new market tax credits in the fall. Mosley on 6 is fully occupied and mixed income, very successful. That's right down the street from the headquarters. Manning Place across the street, I touched on the finance. It will open for occupancy in 30 days. Red Oak Flats is under construction. It should be occupied in the 1st of January, roughly, of 21. Red Oak Townhomes, which is our collaborative effort with the city, and thanks very much to Metro Nashville. Their equity contribution under the previous capital spending plan allows us to bring in 44 new townhomes, of which a third are new, fully federally subsidized inventory into the city of Nashville. Over to Boswell 4, as I mentioned at the top of my presentation, we just received a 9% tax credit to start the next phase of this. We anticipate breaking ground in the spring. Over to Boswell Heights and the outfall of the pipe that the board approved about 2 boards ago. We're putting that out to bid here soon. That's the outfall pipe to handle the additional water retention that comes on this side of the Boswell development. We'll be running to the river. Bear with me. Got a lot of good stuff going on. The Jefferson Street Pocket Park, which is ML's project under community development, is 53% complete. That's over in the Jefferson Street area, right by the bridge area. Our Trolley Barns parking garage is just getting underway. They're getting mobilized and the crane's going up over in Rolling Mill Hill. We have a central maintenance facility that we're working on over at Levy Place. It's 20% complete. Randy Rogers, again, mixed income development on Rosa Parks under construction at 15%. And Curb Victory Hall, we anticipate opening within 60 days. So within all of this, we have a very aggressive Envision program. It is meeting all 5 of the key objectives under our mission and charter, and is remediating concentrated poverty in a very positive way for the community. Moving on to other things on the staff, and it's impossible to hit everything we do in one presentation, but I'll try to hit the highlights. We have 3 waiting lists that are open in June. We've had a lot of media coverage on this. These are for Gernert, Hadley Park, and Edge Hill. We were successful with the Metro Council and having them approve the first tranche of the CDBG COVID response funds and approving a reallocation of disaster recovery funds, allowing us to assist in putting home ownership on the table using funds from the flood, residual funds from the flood of 2010. We have closed the acquisition that the board, thank you for approving, of the Dollar General store. We closed that on June 17th. Forest Bend is proceeding. We anticipate becoming the principal investor with KHAC later this year, but the project is now at 95% construction complete, and we are actively property managing 1/3 of the project. Our expanded security guard service at the towers continues, as does our very conservative approach to access to our elderly and disabled towers. And I think I'm getting close to the end, except to touch on the upcoming really staff stress that goes through our budget process. All the budgets of every property will be presented to me next week. We accelerated this process so the board can get a full presentation in August. We anticipate having a really strong budget this year with a slight OCAF increase of roughly 2%, which will assist in gross revenue. And we anticipate in this budget to bring in new market and workforce apartment revenues from the sites I discussed. And our final touch on is on our rental assistance program. As the board's aware, we are in a a technical area called shortfall for our housing choice voucher program, which is the largest voucher program we have and our most impactful program in the city. We've received a commitment from HUD to make up that shortfall as the shortfall is developed at the end of the fiscal year. This is a great achievement by the staff. HUD typically does not pre-commit to these type of events, but based on our workout plans and to you approving this slight administrative change in a rapid manner for our administrative plan for the housing choice vouchers, I'm confident that we will not face any shortfall in the budget. We'll be well over 90% execution of budget authority, 100% execution of budget authority and 90% on the actual use of vouchers. It's a great organization. I'm lucky to be here. We're doing some really great stuff. It's all in line with our mission, our historic charter, the 5 major objectives we discussed in the retreat, and the expanded intent that is part of our vision statement. And subject to your questions, that's a very broad but quick 11-minute overview of the many things this agency is doing to help those of low income in our community. Subject to your questions, that's my presentation, Board Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Harbison. Thank you very, very much. Questions for our Executive Director?
Just a quick question, Jim. Could you run through quickly the functions of the Envision Center again at Napier-Suticum? Just run through that list.
Sure. And when we meet, I'll give you a separate presentation. Curtis Thomas is our lead on that. Hang on, let me get the page back up. You know, I couldn't get my hands on it if I wanted it. Hang on.
Okay.
Essentially, the Envision Center, though, brings into one location a series of collaborative partners. So we have our HUD partners, of course. We have THDA for home ownership. We have United Way. We have the Financial Empowerment Center. And Curtis, are you on the phone? Are you on the call? Because you're the detail expert on this. We can unmute Curtis. Can you find him? Curtis Thomas. So, but Kay, the site is located there on Lafayette at Suticum Napier. You'll see the sign that says Envision Center. We've got 3 full-time employees there. One is the coordinator of the entire effort. Our piece of it financially is the Connect Home piece that we partner with HUD on, providing the laptops, along with the Jobs Plus training program, which was a $3 million grant we received about 4 years ago. We've got a lot of stats on the Jobs Plus, and in your board packet, you should have received a document that looked, I don't know if you can see this, like this. It's in your board packet. That describes everything going on at Jobs Plus, plus describes the other activities at the Envision Center.
Okay.
I think that's, and if you got a detailed question on any of those, you can call me back, and when we meet, I'll go over it with you in detail.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Harbison, I've got the partner list if you want me to.
Yeah, just go through real quick, Buck.
Okay, so American Job Center, Tennessee Department of Human Services, Connect Home, which is sponsored by us, Workforce Readiness Program, which is sponsored by HUD, Woodbine Community Organization is going to be participant in there, Workforce Essentials, Shine Program, which is a health program, Metro Action Commission has a representative, Nashville State Community College is there to help with education opportunities, Nashville Conflict Resolution Center, Nashville Career Advancement Center, Neighborhood Health, Say Hubbard United Methodist Church.
C. Hubbard,
I'm sorry, and Family and Children's Services. Napier Elementary has representatives there, and the Church of the Messiah. So, you know, generally they're organized into employment opportunities, education opportunities, health opportunities, and character opportunities. And that's how we've attracted partners to participate in the Envision Center and people to fill in those niches. And all of that's consolidated at that location.
And I'll just follow up with one more thought. We've, with our caseworkers, we're identifying, I believe it's 25 families. I may have that number wrong, and Buck can clean me up. In Suticum Napier, they were doing a deep dive on casework on what those families need to succeed. And that's our germinating seed to start with. And with our partners, we determine, does they need education? Is it health? Whatever. And then we bring the partners to them and get that family to move towards self-sufficiency. So that's the goal that came out of the Envision planning process for Sudekum Napier as one of the desires of the community to have this, and to bridge the digital divide is one of their primary goals within that Envision master plan. And it was actually above starting the new housing. So that's one of the reasons we pursued it. And I think one of the commissioners had a question on what we're doing in terms of self-sufficiency. This is one of the examples of what we're doing at Sudekum Napier.
And then will there be a tracking? Probably yes. Tracking and reporting out process.
Yes, that's what the caseworker's job is, and they work for us. So we'll track the residents. We will not track. We're not closing the doors to anybody. We're only going to, but we're not going to track everybody. We'll track our residents, who is our focus. But if someone comes in the door that's from the neighborhood and they want help on, job placement, we're going to give them a hand. But we're not going to track them as where they're going with their support and how they're becoming self-sufficient.
But the residents that participate.
Residents, we will, yes.
Thanks.
Other questions for our executive director? Let me say for the record that I think this is a reflection not only of good work by Jim Harbison and his team, but also hard work by the committees. And I want to just acknowledge here, for those who may only be watching this board meeting, that the committees chaired by Commissioner Thaden and Commissioner Ansari have been working very hard and at great length this year, I know. And so a lot of questions that previously might have surfaced during the course of the board meeting have been handled in committee. And I feel at the same time that the staff has gone the extra mile and is going the extra mile this summer to speak with individual committee members and commissioners to be sure that we have our questions answered. So I do not take, and for the record, the lack of detailed questioning at this time does not reflect a lack of interest. There's been lots of questioning. It's just at earlier stages in the process and also in the performance of our duties. And so I thank the commissioners, each of you, and the chairs in particular for making that possible. We're now on committee agenda item number 9, retreat request review. Mr. Harbison.
I sent out the pretty lengthy Excel spreadsheet just for the meeting of the commissioners. I apologize I didn't get out earlier. You should be seeing the content come up here. So we've really got 3 broad groupments here from the retreat in January. We have pending topics to still be addressed. We have tasks for the committees to continue to work on. And then we have completed tasks. I won't spend much time on the completed tasks, but just for the ones for the staff, you received the Vanguard presentation. I'd like to just update everyone. My sense of the committee meeting was you had no deep questions. The reason we presented this month was if, as you read your documents on the Vanguard retirement program, you have areas that we need to revisit for a decision, then we will do so. But if not, then all that was required was an administrative review of the program and your general your acceptance that it met the needs of providing an adequate retirement program for our residents. And Saul may want to weigh on that, but that one's going pretty well. Let's see. Let's forget.
Could you stop right? Could you stop just there for a moment? Mr. Solomon, are you on the call?
I am on the call.
All right. Are you comfortable with that review? This is obviously a fiduciary issue for the board members, and I'd just like to resolve it right now while the topic is before the board. Is there anything more for us to do?
Not on the Vanguard plan, but we did talk about looking at the other 457 plan. So we will be doing that as well. But I think we did an excellent job. It was well covered, great questions, and I think you clearly fulfilled your fiduciary obligation with respect to that plan.
Thank you. Any questions from the board members? Fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Harbison.
And to follow up, we'll cover the nationwide program. I did not get that as an update here, but I'll add that to the next task list for the nationwide review, which we have not yet scheduled, but we will get it scheduled. And thank you, Saul, for bringing that up. Ethics training is the next board. The final financial review and vote is in September, but the Finance Committee presentation will be in August, and we're driving towards that very aggressively. It's a very big task for us, and I appreciate Commissioner Ansari's input. We'll do our best to present it in a digestible fashion for the board. You see the other topics in their scheduling. I don't think I need to read them to you, but if there's any challenge with it, the board chair and I review this not quite weekly, but certainly monthly. And if there's something here that doesn't square, please contact me. On to committee tasks, I really have no comment. That's up to the committees themselves. And then should you desire, we've done a pretty good job, I think all of us, of knocking out a bunch of tasks from January. There's a good dozen or so there, I think, that we've completed. And we can add to that soon the Vanguard, and after that, the nationwide. So absent any other questions on the list, any comments by the board chair, since he's my collaborative partner in this, really? That's all I have on the board task list.
Thank you, Mr. Harbison. I do feel good, and I think the board does as well, by the progress that we're making on our first effort to set us a group of shared concerns for the course of the year ahead. I know in the committee task area that Commissioner Bowers has that in hand. There is no particular time or deadline on that, but we stand ready to support her in any way that we can. One question for the board members, for the commissioners, as we add issues, as for example we did this week, do you want them inserted? Mr. Harbison and I have had a couple of conversations, and I'm a little bit of two minds on this. Would you like them added to this spreadsheet, or do you want them kept separate from it? My concern, frankly, in mixing was simply that it might cause some dissonance in terms of the work of the year. But on the other hand, having everything in one place has advantages, as Mr. Harbison pointed out. So I'm really at the pleasure of the individual commissioners as to what you find easiest to receive. And Commissioner Ansari, as the leader on reports, reporting, dashboards, appearances, and context, do you have any thoughts on whether or not these things should be combined or whether they can be handled separately, and if there's advantages either way? I look to you, Aoli. You're muted still, I'm afraid.
I think from a 2020 perspective, I prefer keeping them separate. I think it's I think for the first time, I think we started off the beginning of the year with a set of objectives, broadly speaking, that we'd like to get through as an agency. And I think getting through this list, it says, here's where we started and here's where we finished, I think is very important in just being able to look back at our progress over the course of 12 months. So I think I'd be an advocate, at least until we get to this next meeting, is to keeping them separate from what comes up through the year. And I think as we add new things, I think the very first list, some of them feel very kind of sort of rote and administrative in nature, not policy and forward looking and projection. But when I look at this new sheet that Matt or whomever's putting this up, right, is really starting to get to some of the big project oriented things that help us understand the people we serve and the impact we want to have, is kind of that broadening, the broader senses that we want to empower communities, which is the ones we serve and those that serve that community. I think it's worth keeping them separate at this point, and then essentially looking at them again at our next annual retreat, which should be coming up in a number of months.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's very, very helpful to me. Any other comments on that? Because I think this is a perfect segue to the next agenda item.
So if you can add one more comment before we leave.
Please.
Is topic that
Commissioner,
I'm assuming.
You're freezing up.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I'll table it to the next committee meeting. So I'll table it to the next committee meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Agenda item number 10 then is that, again, the set of information requests, and we have the slide in front of us now.
So there's some add-ons from this month that I did not, they're not on there yet. As part of this board, I'll cover our safety procedures for internal to MDHA. I touched on what we're doing at our towers and elsewhere for the residents, which is pretty extensive. DBE, resident demographics, and employee demographics all come next month, along with an overview of our security program. These are security programs are relatively, could be a lengthy topic. And we have 2,600 cameras, an example, in the evolution of that program, along with our additional investment of close to $2 million with the Metro National Police Force. There's probably some background there that will take some time. And then the Envision Center and Resident Opportunity, which was a question. I touched on it today, but in September we'll cover it in more detail, pending the results of the HUD convening WebEx, which is generally a big on-site event with the secretary, but our convening event's Thursday, the 23rd of July. And from that, we assume they'll approve us. Once we're in approved Envision Center, there'll be more to discuss. So those are the tasks that we've garnered thus far, and I have several others to add on as a result of today, and I'll get those and update with the board chair and then present them next month. We'll get them scheduled.
Thank you, Mr. Harbison. Any questions concerning that report on agenda item number 10? If not, we'll move.
Sorry, Bill. There is a lot of business scheduled for August 11th, or the month of August, and I am just concerned if we're actually feasibly going to be able to make it through all of this, and if we need to set some priorities. This will also be receiving the budget presentation, and we also had ethics training scheduled.
Well, let me take that question up in two parts and ask Mr. Harbison for his opinion. The first part is whether or not the staff can, in fact, produce that information by the August meeting. Mr. Harbison, do you see any challenge in any particular one of those items for August? If so, that would be helpful to know.
And what we've done in the past, I think we've prioritized those events that must occur over those that can occur. So, for example, the budget must occur. And so once we get time estimates on those presentations, we sequence those. I present them, discuss with the board chair, and then we come out with a list. And if there's too much in the pot, then we'll discuss it, and I'll then call the board chairs or the committee chairs, as I did with Commissioner Thaden, and ask for input. That's kind of the process that's sort of evolving, but I'm open to however you want to do it. But I'd recommend, certain things have to happen, like the budget. Certain things, ethic training, for example, could be possibly moved if we cannot have room for it. But I need to get those time hacks from the staff first before I give a recommendation.
Well, again, let me ask the question this way: will the information for each of those information requests be available on August the 11th?
Yes.
Okay. And so if the information is available, my thought would be to Commissioner Thaden's question, that we should go ahead and receive the information and have it distributed to the board. These are questions that have been asked and sort of on our minds for 1, 2, or 3 months. And I would prefer, if it's available, that we distribute it to the board. And then secondly, particularly with Mr. Harbison's explanation there, keeping in mind exactly what you said, my thought is that we would keep these things on the agenda, and if we can't get to them for a full and robust discussion, then we will do, as you so successfully did with the redevelopment districts, which we will take the information and move it to the next agenda, but not stand in the way of the budget. I think your concern is raised appropriately, but keep them on the agenda for August, if that's all right with you and the other board members.
This is Paulette Coleman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Yes, I would like to have the material distributed, but I would also like the budget to come before the Friday as early as possible, and preferably before the Friday of the meeting. And then the second thing is, I think we're allowed to have, can we call a meeting provided we give notice?
I'm sorry, you broke up. Can we call what?
Can we call a commission meeting provided we give adequate notice?
Well, we can have a special called meeting with proper notice. And let me on the budget, let me see if I understand what you're sort of exploring and what I think is ahead. This will simply be the finance committee meeting on the budget. We'll receive the budget and then we'll have the finance committee meeting at that time. The full discussion, Jim, will occur later, and there will be time for finance to have additional committee meetings if needed.
You said there will be a finance committee meeting and somebody will receive the budget. Who will receive the budget then at that point?
Jim, why don't you take us through the process as we've discussed it?
So we will present the budget, which is, until the board approves it, a draft budget. And we're working that. We'll provide that on the standard timeline that we have in the past for the finance committee and all other board members, so everyone will get it. If we can accelerate that, we will, but it will be challenging to do so, frankly, but we'll try to get it a little bit early if we can. The purpose of finance
my question is, when would we be receiving that?
I don't have the exact date off the top of my head, but it'll be the normal time before the committee meeting. I'd have to defer to Tanya. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but it's
Looks like the committee meeting will probably be. Looks like the committee meeting will probably be August 6th. If the cadence is like we've been experiencing so far, and the board meeting will be the 11th.
But the board meeting will be the 11th, but the actual approval of the budget is due
Correct.
Is due, Jim, what month?
The approval of the budget won't come until September. So
okay.
So Paulette.
So you'll have a whole month to chew on it, ask questions, and if needed, we can call another meeting.
Okay.
Okay, and the finance committee, again, that's in the hands of the finance committee. But if after that first finance committee meeting on the 6th, there's an opportunity for another meeting in the month of August, appropriately noticed. There could be two meetings. The Metro Council makes it in. They just the whole month of June becomes a budget conversation, and they keep resetting. Some years they have less meetings than others. But I think Commissioner Coleman, your question is appropriate, and I hope, based upon the experience of this board, that we've scheduled plenty of time. And the staff has been good to advance the initial presentation to us so that you will have at least a month to consider it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready to talk about the safety procedures? This is item number 11. Anything more on that? Jim, you're muted.
Unless there are questions on the information request, we're ready to move forward. Sure. Just waiting for the slide to come up.
Just one quick request. Could you email this spreadsheet that Matt put up?
Certainly, I'd ask you to check your email. I sent it out this morning, but I'll resend it to you, Kay. Hopefully I got the right email.
I got that one, but the one that I think Matt Wiltshire added, or does yours include his?
Mine include, these are my spreadsheets, right? So I sent two of them in that attachment.
Okay.
Two attachments. One's the larger board and the other one's the task list, small one, right?
Thanks.
Should have got them this morning.
Okay, I got him.
So to highlight our occupational safety and health plan, we've continuously maintained a safety and health plan since the state of Tennessee established the occupational health and safety programs, at least since the late 1950s. Our purpose is to show management's commitment to maintain a safe and healthy work environment and to create safety guidelines to protect all our employees from unsafe conditions. It includes several parts, but among the requirements are a commitment for the program and employees' involvement in the program. We do that through a management committee. Requirement of continuous inspection of hazards and potential hazard at each work site. All property managers, all maintenance supervisors as part of their evaluation. This is an inclusive part of their review and how they maintain safety at site, and that's measured by accident rates and other measures that we have in place. Develop and maintain safety procedures preventing, controlling existing or potential hazards in the workplace. And our approach here is a thing called operational risk management. We identify risks, and then we look at ways to mitigate them, and we've certainly done that in the COVID process. Continuing ongoing training for managers, supervisors, and employees. Twice a year, we're trying to figure out how to do this in a WebEx next, but I meet with employees, everyone, at least twice a year. We always touch on safety. There's always a discussion on it. And in addition, there's training that Pat Thicklin, our safety manager, holds for all hands, also for safety managers at each site and each directorate, and for the directors themselves who are charged with maintaining a safe environment for the employees under their charge. Requirement to provide and use safety equipment, personal protective equipment, and device necessary to protect employees as part of the written plan. We certainly invested heavily in this in the last 120 days between face shields and masks, atomizers, hand sanitizers, a large amount of investment, and laptops to allow a large number of our people to work at home that we previously not work at home. And then an efficient administration of the program, and that is largely due to the leadership of Pat Thicklin, who I applaud for hard work here and staying on top of this, using communication with directors virtually daily, but certainly weekly on safety to make sure that we meet the requirements and go beyond them to take care of our people. And just an aside, we have 27 major programs that we receive federal funds largely for. We have a couple that are state funded. All of them have pretty intrusive inspection regimes. So in addition to reporting to OSHA, we report to HUD, we report to THGA, and each of our loan closings, each of our major developments has a safety component and a safety program that's required to make sure the site is safe and that our employees are safe. We'll be providing a write-up and a more detailed presentation. Well, not probably in more detail, but a coverage of this at the next board. We haven't really reviewed this plan with the board resolution since 2011, and we'll be requesting your approval after you've reviewed the plan and provide any questions you may have on our existing plan. Next slide, please. So just on some data, 20 accidents per year. That results in, I remember we have 324 employees. So an accident can be as simple as someone spraining an ankle. It could be as serious as a car accident. We've not had any deaths, obviously, not had any real serious injuries. We do have medical costs for on-the-job injuries are covered by our insurance program. Our incident rate, 8.84, which compares very favorably with other agencies of our size. It's not uncommon to see this in the 20s for a monthly accident, for an annual accident rate. And then our compensation experience rating is 1 and 1.4. Now that's on a 1 scale. So if you're at 1, that means you're basically doing very well. If you're above that, you're doing superb. I'll come back and give in our follow-up what these ratings mean, but the point I wanted to make is we are reviewed in many ways frequently and have to report them. Our programs include a variety of things, but we have a separate safety inspection protocol that we do in-house and the onboarding of new employees. We cover it in very great detail. We have required OSHA training for maintenance staff and supervisors under our trainer program, where we train the supervisor who in turn trains his staff, and he has to report back, he or she has to report back on how they do that. Our employees have no challenges. They're excellent at reporting safety violations that they witness. Accidents are reported within 24 hours and are investigated separately by HR, and if it's serious, by our Inspector General, who's that role is the General Counsel, Will Chopin, and workers' comp covers any lost time on injury leave. I won't read the rest of the bullets to you. Can you scroll down just a little bit? I want to touch on the drug-free. Well, the last bullet point's on the drug-free workplace, which we have been very forthright about, and it has been somewhat of a challenge. But everyone that is a safety qualified employee, including myself, because I, thanks to the board, have access to a government issued vehicle, You are randomly tested for drugs. I've been tested virtually every year since I've been here. I don't know how accidentally I always get tested. I don't think there's a worry about that, but I don't mind setting that example. And then on a random basis, all employees are tested that are in a safety position, which means they handle either power tools, drive vehicles, or are involved in some safety protocol in which they could injure themselves or injure others. Our positive rate is essentially zero. I think since I've been here, we've had 4 incidents with positive results from drugs. All of those resulted from accidents, usually low level, like a gator bumped into a tree. And we've not had any for what I would call a severe drug. We have had positives for THC and marijuana, which has led to termination. So, but that's over a 6-year period. I think it's 4, it might be 5 total that we've had employees that came up positive. We test quite a few throughout the year. So that's the overall plan. I'd like to touch on COVID. I'll stop for a moment if there's any questions on the writ large plan for the agency, and then I have a follow-on slide on what we're doing specifically on COVID. Are there any questions thus far? I've gone pretty quick on some of this stuff, and Pat's on the line if you got a detailed question.
What's the indication of staff buy-in or staff compliance with the proposal that you are presenting?
Well, what I'm presenting is not a proposal. It's what we do day in and day out every day, first. Second, we do a thing called SurveyMonkey for morale, command climate, as I call it, surveys, which includes questions on safety, and we get satisfactory marks on that when we've done that. We haven't done one probably in about 6 months, so we can certainly follow up on it. In open forums, I solicit questions. I mean, me personally, to every employee. In what I call the all hands meetings, which we do twice a year. Everyone seems to understand. And I guess the other indicator is a variety of means for employees to voice any points they have to make with us. And we have a hotline. We have, of course, they can talk to the supervisor. There's a direct email access to me. And I will say employees tend not to be shy if they have a problem. They certainly reach out to me personally, and we deal with the issues. So I think our greatest indicator is the safety track record, which will probably give a better context next time of where we stand. But we haven't anybody hurt. So, now maybe we're just lucky. I don't know. But there's no real pushback from employees about trying to be safe. So there's a variety of ways we would get their buy-in, and mainly it's in their day-to-day practices on site.
Thank you.
Are there other questions on the existing program that has a slight update we'll be bringing to you for approval? Okay, if not, on to COVID. You've seen the emails, I think, that I've put out. We have a pretty robust program, and it has taken us a lot of energy and time, and it is a challenge. But we're no different than anybody else presently in America. So each department is tasked with assessing the potential for exposure and determining the best work methods to reduce or limit face-to-face contact. The science here for COVID, as we all know, is not robust or complete, but clearly face-to-face contact, minimizing that is our best method of making people safe. Based on the guidelines of the CDC and OSHA and guidelines we get from HUD, we have a HUD monthly safety protocol on COVID at the national level we participate in. We've implemented several procedures. I think the biggest one is the telework, which we had never really done before. And we've got a number of people who just are at home and doing their work very successfully. We've closed all our work locations to the public, and each office implemented procedures to allow our service to continue without the face-to-face contact. Anyone reporting any illness, we encourage them to stay home. Every employee has their temperature taken every day. And if they have a temperature, they don't participate, they go get a test. We have an app that we receive from Ascension that's a screening mechanism that they answer a series of questions every morning, me included. And if any of those questions lead the logarithms in that telemedicine app to indicate they need to take a test. We get them to be tested. Maintenance and leasing staff telework with alternating work schedules. That's probably our area of greatest challenge. In that 90 partial work telework where they work 2 days and they have 3 days off. That's pretty much where we are now with the maintenance team. We are limiting our work orders to urgent and emergent work orders with the exception of turning units to release to people as vacancies occur. We have issued a significant amount of personal protective equipment, masks, gloves, clothing colors, hand sanitizer, face issue. We've bought the digital thermometers for your head for every supervisor, disinfectant spray, wipes. We disinfect any area that we think has had someone that has had a positive result, and we clean areas twice a day with a pretty robust protocol. Training is provided to staff on understanding the virus, what we know about it, how to work, how to reduce exposure, and how to wear their PPE correctly. Additionally, we've tested all the staff once. We'll test everyone again this month. And I think we're going to be going forward, probably try to test them on a monthly basis for all hands just to make sure that we identify any challenges that may exist. I just highlight a couple of things. There's a lot more I could talk about on what we do on COVID, but I think the key part is everything we can think of, we've pursued. We've now implemented our own contact tracing mechanism. We had one employee who went home, went back to his home of record where he grew up now about 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, for a funeral, and came back, and after he back at work for 4 days, he took a test and turned out positive. That led Pat Thicklin and her team to develop our contact tracing method, which meant we found 81 employees that had contact with us. And one of the guys doing anything wrong. He just, he didn't know. He was asymptomatic. So 81 of us, and that included me, 81 of us had our test taken again last Thursday. And it was good that we did, in that of the 81, 11 turned up positive, and they are now at home quarantined, and we're tracing down those 11 to make sure that may not go any farther, and we're working to get the rest of the entire staff tested next week. Point that out in that we have a protocol that identified the challenge and led to its resolution, reducing the risk of the rest of the employees. I think I got to go on. There's lots of other things going on that people of initiative are taking on their own, but primarily between the daily temperature check, the telework screening, the PPE provided, the education provided, and taking a very significant minority of the staff, 126 just don't come to work anymore out of 324. We've done what we can to reduce the risk of COVID transmission across the workforce while we must meet the mission of the agency. We really can't turn units, by computer. We've got to do that, but now our protocol for that includes, for example, turning only empty units. We ask the families to leave or they've moved out. Same way with our pesticide protocols. We don't spray pesticide into an occupied unit. We only do it into empty units. So within reason to meet the requirements of the agency, everything that me and the staff can come up with in research, we've done. And subject to questions on COVID, that is the update on COVID safety in addition to the safety plan.
Are there any questions?
Yes. What have been the additional costs to the agency for complying with the requirements and PPE and all those other things?
I don't have that number at hand. I'll need to take that for the record. But I got Robbie sitting over there. How many laptops did we have to buy? How many laptops did you get just alone? Was it 9? Yeah, 90? 100. So as an example, we bought 100 laptops. So just for that one, for just 100 laptops, but we've not tallied that cost. I guess we could, but we haven't.
Mr. Harbison, so we're tracking that cost for potential payback. So that's not a hard number. That's not a hard item for us to pull that number together.
Okay, take it for the record then.
Yes, sir.
We are coding all expenses that are related to COVID broadly. So,
Those,
Commissioner, I don't think that directly answers your question, but as of about 3 weeks ago, that figure was $254,000.
Other questions?
I'd like to ask a question, please. With all the can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Have you had any complaints with the maintenance staff complaining or being concerned about asking the residents in the housing the questions on the COVID? Do they have it? Have they been around anyone that has it? And would it be okay to because they're still at risk because everybody's not going to tell the truth. That's for real. And also, that's just a concern. I mean, everybody's not, all the residents don't want to get tested unless they find out they're sick or having symptoms. And they see kind of reckless living. I mean, I live here. I see reckless living. And the maintenance staff has to go into each resident's home. That's my concern. That's the question I was asking before time, that the maintenance has to be staffed. I know that they're on a job, but the residents, they have that opportunity not to get tested. That's kind of, I don't know. I'm just asking a question.
Well, Commissioner Betts, I mean, it's certainly something that worries me to death. And our resident MDHA relationships governed by the lease. We have varying degrees among our residents of attention to the seriousness of the threat of COVID. In our towers, the attention is great. It's focused. They're very good about, we have a high participation rate in the testing that we provide. And as you know, we continue to test at each of the towers every week. And they're very supportive in general terms, the residents are, the program we put into the towers. At the family properties, it varies widely where you are at Cumberland View and frankly here at Casey. It is a very mixed approach by the residents. And because of that, although I went very quickly, we only do urgent or emergent work orders presently. The other thing we do is turn units. To turn a unit, the family has left for whatever reason. They've got another apartment elsewhere. It's a vacant unit. So there is no one there. And we do pesticide. And if it's pesticide, we generally, although I'm sure someone's going to find one exception somewhere, we don't let families stay in the apartment when you're spraying pesticide. It's just that we've never done that as a policy or a procedure. I'm sure there's been not 100% compliance, but there's always, no rule is perfectly administered, but there may be some exceptions to that for whatever reason. And since we only do emergent or urgent, that would be a flooded apartment or unit turns or pesticide. That limits the number of maintenance activities, which allows us to have a decreased manning level, as you saw in the number of people are actually here. And the other piece is we provide as much PPE as we can think of. They've got gloves, they've got the mask. We just ordered a bunch of face shields, and they have a protocol set of questions to ask the family, has anyone had a positive result? Do you have a temperature? And you're right, we rely on residents to give honest answers, and some may not. But within that, if it's an emergent issue, we still have to go in the apartment with the PPE on and fix the flooded floor. But we're only taking those work orders that require that. But yeah, it's a concern, and I know Will Biggs worries about it, Julia worries about it, every property manager worries about it. I mean, all of us do, and we've done our best to mitigate the risk and our operational risk management while maintaining the operations necessary to keep the apartments in play. I hope that answers your question.
Are there other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Ongoing testing at the apartment communities across town, is that offered on a periodic basis, or how does that work again?
Well, as you may recall, we did 100% testing with the National Guard, which had planning wrinkles, execution wrinkles, but we did it, and I think it was largely be construed as successful. Our turnout was not what we'd hoped, and we wanted 50%. I don't think we got close to that. We're probably in the 40 percentile of people that turned out. So we gave voluntary, not forced, voluntary offering for everybody. And since then, we are collaborating with and have collaborated with Joe Webb over at Nashville General. And every week, we rotate between the towers. So we continue to test the towers every Friday. Again, it's voluntary, but we are seeing an uptick. And that's why I think the towers support our program pretty well. We're seeing an increase. So we're now in our second round because we've tested all the towers. Some of them are on their third round. And we're seeing an increase in the number of residents that come down to take the voluntary test. And I think we had one slight exception. We had a slight downturn, but like a 1% downturn. But most of them are seeing a 10 or 15% increase each time they come back. And we will continue based on the availability of the providers from General. And our agreement is, and it's somewhat of a handshake, frankly, Joe is providing the physicians and the physician assistants, the nurses. We pay for the tests. And we will continue to rotate. I think we did Gernert last week. Did Hadley last week, and so we just finished Hadley. We did Edgefield before that, Gernert, and we'll keep working through those towers every week and keep providing testing until this thing ends. And that is a financial burden that we track as well. And sorry, I slipped up. I told everybody to track those so we can get reimbursed. I forgot why I did that.
Within a follow-up, do you know off the top of your head what percentage of the population of all the residents live in those towers? About?
For disabled and disabled and elderly in MDHA properties overall, roughly 46%, just under half.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? I do think to this point, we feel good about especially the protections of our senior populations. I think it's the largest concentration of seniors in the city of Nashville. But I think the continued focus and diligence that Jim is reflecting on behalf of the whole staff, the interest of the commissioners obviously makes it clear that that remains a priority. On the general hospital effort, we are thankful, I think, for the partnership there. Since our last meeting, as you know, the General Hospital has received more than $9 million in COVID funding, which is now perhaps puts them in a better position to be of assistance to themselves and to us as they think about reimbursing and paying for those things that would be useful to our residents. It's a significant amount of money that's been provided at General Hospital. I know the administration is very focused on that, but it's worth remembering that there is now more funding available for those things as we go forward. Any other questions for Mr. Harbison? We are on item number 12, additional business. I wanted to update the commissioners earlier in this year. You will recall that we had a presentation from Dexter Samuels, who was then the chair of the Airport Authority Board. He was presenting to us on their recently completed evaluation process for their executive director. One of the things that had arisen during our meetings in December and then also in the retreat is that we did not have in place a process for that regular review, although it was called for in the executive director's contract. The effort, the presentation by then Chair Samuels was an effort to begin that conversation so that we could, during the course of this year, fulfill our obligation and obviously our responsibility. We have had some delay in that process as a result of matters like those we've just been talking about, but I wanted the board to know that I've met with Saul Solomon, I've talked with the director about this, and I would like to begin that conversation in August and likely through a calling of the committee so that we can move forward in this calendar year to provide at least the beginning of an evaluation process that hopefully for the next year will be the kind of full and robust evaluation which this group of commissioners has called for, previous commissioners have provided for by contract, and that we should be in a position to have that conversation again, begin in August with the notion that we will go through a preliminary evaluation this year and be in a position to do formal evaluation going forward. That's just an update from your chair. Any other additional business to come before this Board of Commissioners? There being, go ahead.
One more piece. Can I just ask that we add kind of sort of the CWA project, we add that to our list of things. I mean, we've talked about it for a while, but haven't really had any updates as kind of sort of how we're going to pursue that. Add that as part of our normal and routine process.
It's great. We have a spreadsheet we can add that to, right? We can add that to the Wiltshire spreadsheet, and that's what I recommend that we do. Any further conversation, or Mr. Harbison?
I'm sorry, I'd included that in the, if you look on the board retreat task list, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's
okay. It's on there.
It's Boscable. So CWA is a principal component of the way forward here at Casey, and I intended on covering that there. And I think I understand your question, how we're going to approach that major decision point with the board. That's part of that presentation for the overall Casey envelope. So,
Commissioner Ansari, are you comfortable with leaving it within that section, Commissioner Ansari? Or okay, well then we're good. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, second.
Second.
Properly seconded. Any discussion? All those, before we adjourn, let me say that we are about to reconvene after this meeting for a public hearing. It was properly noticed and scheduled for today, I believe, unless I'm told anything different. We're going to stay in place. You keep your video on. You stay muted. It will not. We'll see what the public reaction is, but it will be, I'm sure, something you'll absolutely want to do, and for which we need to have a quorum, I believe. So that having been said, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye. All those opposed, no.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. I'd now like to call to order the public meeting, which has been properly noticed and was just referenced in the last meeting just prior to adjournment, and that is the public hearing that has been announced concerning the streamlined annual PHA plan. Mr. Harbison.
I would just ask Jamie, have we had any notifications? I checked this morning. We didn't have anyone that desired to make public comments. Have you had anyone contact you per our notice to give public
No,
comments?
sir, we have not.
So
let me
go ahead. Go ahead, Board Chair.
You go ahead. That's fine.
Well, then the other data point would be: has anyone called in to Robbie? To my knowledge, no one has that would desire without notification, and I'm getting a no from our IT section. So, Board Chair, I believe we have properly noticed this. The public housing plan has been on our website for over 45 days. We did receive one set of written comments, which was provided with the package we sent. We provided our responses to that. We, by the HUD process, could not respond to that gentleman until we had the public hearing, where we'd have an opportunity to expound on him if he desired to. Unless there's somebody that comes up in the next 2-3 seconds, we'll not have any public comments here. We'll respond to that gentleman, and we'll take his written comments as inclusive with our submission to HUD. So I would recommend that if there's no indication from IT and no indication from our public affairs communication director, that we have no public comments for this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Harbison. Let me then, for the record, say that I have detected a quorum, and Mr. Solomon, I think, has taken note of the presence of a quorum of the Board of Commissioners. And Mr. Solomon, this would be your last chance today to make that very special statement that you make that's so comforting to us and to all lawyers everywhere.
This public hearing is being held pursuant to Governor Lee's executive order on virtual meetings for local government agencies. And so we are conducting it in accordance with his directives. This meeting, like all MDHA meetings of the like, is being recorded and will be available on YouTube at a later date. And as indicated by Mr. Harbison earlier, the public was given ample notice as to the meeting and given an opportunity to be heard if he or she so desired.
Well, thank you, Mr. Solomon.
Welcome.
you get the job done each time. I thought your second presentation was the stronger one, but overall very good, and we appreciate it.
Nobody's asking for your review of my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Well, certainly you didn't ask. Any other questions, concerns, comments before we call this public hearing to an end? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion is made, seconded by Commissioner Bowers. Any discussion of adjournment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And you are adjourned. Thank you all very, very much. You too, Mr. Solomon.